I'm Frank Vaughn. It is Sunday, November 16th, and today we have to talk about the elephant in the room. I have conversed on this channel at length about how Pierre Poilievre is never going to win the center in this country. That catering to the middle, catering to what's the so-called soft liberal vote isn't going to work because they are entrenched and they are convinced, whether it's factual or not, I don't think it is, that Donald Trump is responsible for every single problem that Canada faces right now, and that any other problems aren't problems. Full steam denial. And I don't think you're going to break them out of those trenches because the Liberals have effectively brainwashed a significant portion of the population, and any future problems that arise, they'll blame on Donald Trump because they're homers. They're on a political team, and they don't want to admit that their political team could ever do anything wrong. But the elephant in the room is Trump and MAGA and something that has gone wrong over the last 10 months. Now, videos talking critically about Donald Trump don't tend to land very well among my viewership, but I hope you'll stick with me because if you really care about America First, if you really care about MAGA, if you really care about Fortress North America, if you really care about disengaging from the world's forever wars and from the politics and machinations of the World Economic Forum and the European Union and all else, we've got to be honest. The only reason there will be any breaks in today's videos is I have to collect my thoughts about how to present this. I didn't sleep last night. I went to bed at 8:30. I didn't get to sleep until 6 in the morning, and then I only slept for about an hour and a half and 2 hours before I got out of bed. And while I was laying there not sleeping, I was thinking over all of this stuff. I actually got up at 2 o'clock in the morning and made a bunch of notes and then went back to bed. But it's hard to know sometimes where to start. And I think we got to start with what triggered this thought process, and that is Trump's blistering attack on Thomas Massie. I'm not going to address his attack on Marjorie Taylor Greene. No shade to her. But Thomas Massie is a good guy doing good things. He's one of the only people in the U.S. government that doesn't take AIPAC money, which is kind of important. It's a foreign organization operating in the United States to the benefit of a foreign government, and it's not registered as such. And he sticks to the promises that MAGA made. Now, there is a cult of personality around Donald Trump, which says that his desire and his will, I actually seen it on X last night when I started posting about Massie, how Donald Trump is a multiple philanderer on his third marriage, and he decides not just to pick on Thomas Massie, but to pick on the fact that he got remarried after his wife's death. According to Donald Trump, he did it too soon. Who is he to judge? Talk about somebody throwing stones from inside a glass house. But what's Thomas Massie's problem? What is Donald Trump's problem with Massie? It's that Massie is calling out the amount of spending that the U.S. government does defending Israel, and Massie wants the truth when it comes to Jeffrey Epstein. Massie is dedicated to the promises, to the idea, dare I say, to the ideology that is America First and MAGA. The ideas, not the man. And there's a lot of people who demand unconditional support for the man and not the ideas, and kind of want to ignore that something dark has come over the Trump administration. Attacking the man and his wife it's morally abhorrent. And the thing is, how this relates to the Pierre Poilievre opening that I made is that if it's true that Pierre Poilievre cannot hope to lure away the liberal voters the way that he thinks he can, and the way that Jenny Byrne and the strategists at the CPC think they're going to win an election, and all the apologists who say that they have to follow the strategy and they need more time, and there's always this excuse making. 10 years of losses, and we get the exact same talking points and excuses every single time. If that's true of Poilievre and the Conservative Party, it's far more true for Trump and the Republicans, who don't have much of a soft center to work with. And even though the Democrat Party is drifting more and more towards socialism, drifting more and more towards Marxism, and is unhinged in ways that are going to have consequences, when the president, when the leader of the MAGA movement is turning his guns on the most vocal advocates for MAGA, the idea, he's attacking his own base in the lead up to the midterm elections. And every single person should be concerned about that, because targeting people telling the truth, you see, here's another way to put it. A good friend, someone you know is actually a friend in your life, isn't going to lie to you. A good friend, if you're a fatty, will come along and every now and again slap you in the belly and ask you how far along you are, and you'll joke about it, but that's a good friend. A good friend will tell you the truth. A good friend will tell you, hey, man, you probably, I'm just, thinking out loud here, you probably shouldn't be addicted to hard drugs. It's a bad thing. A good friend will tell you that truth over and over again until you decide they're no longer your friend. Even though they're the best friend you ever had, a good friend tells you the truth. And somebody who cares about ideas, dare I say an ideology, will tell you the truth, will tell the leader of the movement heading towards that goal the truth when they drift off course. Now, it's not just, in any way, the attack on Massie. This started a while ago when Trump decided to gaslight his entire base, including his own son, Don Jr., about Jeffrey Epstein. Don Jr. was a huge advocate for truth about Epstein, getting to the bottom of it. Who did he work for? What was he doing? How many people did he compromise? How many victims did he actually create? And then all of a sudden, Don Jr. went quiet. It's like he got a phone call from Daddy telling him to shut up. And I don't know why. There's a lot of people. I mean, every single day, social media is alive with certain, when I say certain, I mean certainty. The certainty underlying the accusations that he is 100% guilty of the worst, most heinous things. And I don't know that to be true. I don't know it not to be true. I don't personally believe it's true, given the history of the man before he got involved in politics. I think he likes adult Eastern European women. I think he's guilty of something that 40% of men are guilty of, which is philandering and trading in the old wife for a new wife and all that stuff. I mean, it's pretty normal human behavior. It's not my behavior, but whatever. I don't think it clouds the ultimate moral shade on the guy. I think it comes into the conversation when you start throwing shade at a guy for getting remarried after the tragic death of his widow, or after the tragic death of his wife. I mean, I've thought about this myself in my life. I love my wife with all my heart, and she loves me with all her heart. If something happened, I don't know if I would move on. But we've both discussed it, that if something happened, if you met somebody who could make you happy, you don't have to forget the love that you had in order to move on and still be happy. Humans crave company. At any rate, he's in no position to judge. But it's not just about this Massie thing. It's just the latest thing. It's the trigger point for me. 600,000 Chinese students are going to come into the United States. The justification that Trump has given is that it would undermine the economy and it would destroy the entire university system. The very university system that is educating year after year new cohorts and new classes of student that absolutely hate him, hate America, and hate MAGA at its core. So we have to, in his argument, the Americans have to bring in these 600,000 students to take their money, train them with the most advanced skills that can be had for money so they can go back to China and continue building the army that America seems destined to have a great big conflict against. What is that all about? What about the reversal on H-1B visas? And I believe they're called H-2B visas. I might have that terminology wrong, but there's a grouping, there's a box of different foreign worker programs that during the campaign, guys, it's just clear. Trump talked about putting the emphasis on the American worker and restoring the health of the American worker and making them prosperous again. That's what he said. And since then, it's been a complete about face. Now they're going to bring them in. And we also know that Trump's organization and his companies heavily rely on these immigrant worker programs to save money and to staff their places at the lowest possible price. This is an about face. It's an abandonment of a plank of the MAGA promise. The next thing that happened fairly recently is linked to Epstein. We have to remember that Kash Patel and Pam Bondi are appointed by the Trump administration. They head the FBI and the Justice Department, respectively. Tucker Carlson recently did a video, and he's been under attack. He's been doing great journalism. It was kind of weird when he had that nun that looks suspiciously like a dude who just happened to be George Stephanopoulos' sister, who's a nun. Like, that was weird. I mean, of all the people he could interview, that was kind of weird. But the body of his work over the last several months has been fantastic. I mean, you're doing yourself a disservice if you're not tuning in, at least on some level. Maybe he could go further. Maybe you don't like how far he goes. Maybe you don't like the way he tells the story. But when he's talking about 9/11 truth, when he's talking about Zionism, when he's talking about what's happening in Gaza, when he's talking about these subjects, he's telling way more truth than the administration is itself. But he released a video where he examined Thomas Crooks, the guy who attempted to fired 8 shots, at least that's the official word, at the president. Nicked his ear, damn near took his head off. So he gave us more information about Thomas Crooks than the Trump administration has given us since it happened. For those of you who don't know, it was well over a year ago. So Tucker Carlson did this great journalism. That's what it is. That's what real journalism looks like. And it motivated Kash Patel to come out and put out a statement where he said, there's nothing more to see here. He buried the nothing more to see here, justified it in a bunch of numbers about hundreds of people working and thousands of hours and man hours and whatever to conclude Thomas Crooks acted alone, nothing more to see here. Why the cover-up? And that's what it is. It's a cover-up. The entire time, the entire investigation, they swept his house. They did all sorts of stuff to basically dissuade the public from finding out the truth. I find it really suspicious. They find Tucker Carlson's journalism so threatening that they have to make an official statement. The same is true when it comes to the Charlie Kirk assassination. The longer people, independently and together, work on piecing together the circumstances surrounding that public shooting of Charlie Kirk, the more it looks like an organized hit, maybe military, by non-state actors, by state actors. I don't really want to speculate on it all. I've got my opinions. You better believe my opinions are starting to solidify when it comes to who actually did it. But it's something I'm leaving to other people who are doing great work. If you want to actually tune in to just one video of Candace Owens, to give her a shot, I would recommend her last live stream. Very powerful, very compelling. And the work that she's doing is making these people incredibly nervous. I also, last night, I was watching a video by another fella. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. Bruce. He was reviewing one of Rob McCoy's speeches that he was giving at one of these cavalry churches. And in real time, during the live stream, the video of the speech by Robbie McCoy was pulled and set to private. Nobody's telling you this stuff. It's really spooky, folks. It's really spooky. But again, the FBI is saying there's nothing to see here, that this Tyler Robinson kid acted alone. And there's so much more to the story. The baseline thing that I've focused on since the very beginning is there's no way in the 9 hells the 30-06 can create the kind of wound that we all saw in real time happen to Charlie Kirk. What is going on with the Trump administration? We also have a large collection of force gathering in the Caribbean Sea, the Sea of America, the Gulf of America, ready to strike Venezuela and who knows how many other people. Mexico is having a populist uprising right now against their current leader, which is a whole other subset to this story. But you got the Colombian president threatening to eliminate Donald Trump on camera, saying he's going to kill him. There's all this justification building up for military intervention, and there's a large amount of force of American kinetic energy being collected in the Caribbean, and it's not there to do nothing. It's there to accomplish something. And while the Americans are off to taking boats out of the water, which they call narco boats, at the same time, the Venezuelan government is bending over backwards to say, you know what, we're willing to give you everything. We'll give you the oil, we'll give you the minerals, we will crack down on every kind of drug we can. In the time since the threats have started, they've busted something like 64 kilos of drugs destined for the United States, and they're trying to show the world that they're being proactive. Meanwhile, what America has to show is almost a couple dozen boats bombed, a number of people dead, and not a single gram of drugs seized yet for the American taxpayer to examine. This military buildup contradicts what Tulsi Gabbard said recently about this being the end of the era of American intervention. It seems like American intervention is carrying on. When it comes to Ukraine, Trump promised to end the war in a day. It would be so easy, so easy. We heard it so many times. It's going to be so easy. I know these guys. I'm going to pick up the phone. I'm going to call up Putin. I'm going to say, Vladdy, you got to stop the killing, man. Didn't happen. Some numbers have been shifted around. Basically, U.S. support is now being further subsidized by Europe, which has no money. So they're paying the United States for the weapons they still want to ship to Ukraine. But the war is continuing, and Trump's public stance since August has shifted to Ukraine should fight until they take back all of their territory. This is again in contradiction to the promises made during the campaign. On this channel, I believe in accountability. On this channel, I believe in just refereeing down the middle, trying to find the middle. I'll celebrate the things that are good, and I will criticize the things that are bad. And currently, it's my approximation, it's my belief, based on the evidence. In the last week, Ukraine has lost something like 200 square kilometers of territory. The Russians are breaking through towards Zaporizhia, not from the south, but from the west, sweeping in behind all of those Ukrainian defensive positions which are oriented to the south. At the same time, the Zelensky regime is going through palpitations at the very least. Big corruption scandal with his a man that was referred to as Zelensky's piggy bank, his banker, a man who finances his personal life to great degrees and also a professed Zionist. There's ministers fleeing the country. This individual, 5 hours before he was to be arrested, fled and went to Israel. Ministers have been fired or in the process of being replaced. There's this huge leadership shakeup. And if I'm honest, I think we're getting close to the time where Zelensky is going to be turned on by Europe and the United States and pulled down. And I don't know what replaces him. But the fact is, the war is lost. The battle for Pokrovsk is over. Nobody's reporting on that. Mirnorad is completely surrounded and about to be taken within the next week. It's going to happen. The Zaporizhia front is literally falling apart. And all along the Ukrainian front, the Russian forces are on the march. Mass defections, big surrenders, all while Kiev is in the midst of a great big power shakeup. The war is lost. And the only thing that any sane person can do right now is impose a peace and save the lives of the few young Ukrainian men that are left. But at this point, all Zelensky wants to talk about, the man with the nose problem, he's sniffing always way too much, is lowering the conscription age from 22 down to 18. And Europe and many voices in the neocon United States, which, by the way, Lindsey Graham opposed the rise of Trump. Ben Shapiro opposed the rise of Trump. Ted Cruz ran against him. All of these Christian Zionists opposed the rise of Trump. Levin, that hack talk show host, opposed the rise of Trump. All of a sudden, as Trump is attacking the MAGA base that made his election possible, everybody is pretending, not everybody, but a whole lot of people are pretending that Lindsey Graham and Ben Shapiro and Levin and all these other characters are the MAGA base, that they've been MAGA this entire time. And their ideas, perhaps reeled in, perhaps reined in by Donald Trump somewhat, didn't get into a regime change war in Iran, even though the United States, in spite of the fact that the regime change war that the neocons wanted was successfully foibled by Donald Trump, which means there's still some hope, folks. I'm not trying to paint too dark a picture here, but I'm trying to tell you there's cracks. There's cracks in the facade. You got to see through it. The United States spent $34 billion, more than the entire Israeli defense budget for a year, in the defense of Israel in the bombing campaign on Iran. The American taxpayer subsidizes Israel directly to the tune of $4 billion. They subsidize Israel indirectly in weapons transfers and other things that go on. But more importantly, the Middle East always has a dedicated carrier group. And I listened to a public official. You're going to have to take my word for it. You don't have to, because you can go and verify and do whatever you want. But I was listening to a public U.S. official close to Trump not long ago talking about how there has to be a carrier group in the Middle East to defend Israel. That's got an annual cost just of maintenance of $2.5 billion at a time when the United States is broke. What's that all about? Why is it the American taxpayer has to subsidize the defense of Israel to the tune of $40-50 billion a year, depending on how you want to score it? And why aren't you allowed to ask questions about that? Why is Lindsey Graham steering U.S. foreign policy? This is a guy that Donald Trump actively campaigned against his ideas and now seems to be directing traffic inside the Trump administration. What is that all about? There's also the $20 billion parachute drop of cash into Argentina, supporting Milei, who just survived another election. Now, whether you think he's a good guy and what he's doing in Argentina is justified and necessary, wasn't Donald Trump talking about ending foreign aid? Ending this sending of U.S. tax dollars and future U.S. tax dollars overseas to disappear into the budgets of other countries? The United States, for those of you who don't know, is broke. They don't have any money. Their economy's on the ropes. As much as the administration, as much as people in the administration want to talk about the stock market, want to talk about all these things, we're on borrowed time here. The cracks are already showing. Capital flows are tightening, or capital availability is tightening. Inflation is actually running around 6% when you actually just use the old calculation before they adopted the new calculation, which is designed to lower the visual. So the price of some things are coming down for sure in the United States. That's 100%. But the price of other things are not. Collectively, the United States is in trouble, just like every other country in the West, just pretty much like every country in the world except for the Russian Federation. They're doing okay. The Saudis are doing okay. There's certain nations that are doing okay. But the vast majority, the big nations, the Europeans, the Americans, the Chinese, all of them are in trouble, and all of them are trying to buy time on a day-to-day basis to try and hide how much trouble, and that there's a big correction coming into play, that we're probably already in recession anyway. The point being, the U.S. deficit featured large in the latter days of the campaign leading up to Trump's reelection. Elon Musk was a big part of that, and then he came in. They formed Doge. Elon Musk went in there, and now he's gone. He's back in the private sector. He's doing his work. But as much as Donald Trump wants to talk about all the money that's being brought in by tariffs, the U.S. deficit is still spiraling out of control. And instead of cutting back on it, we've got the big, beautiful bill, which cut taxes, which reduces revenue, and increased spending. So there's no talk of fixing it. At this time, when these deficits are out of control, the Trump administration is still parachuting cash to nations outside of the United States. It does run contrary to his promises in the campaign. We also have to remember that an inordinate amount of money is still going to Ukraine. The administration has approved some $40+ billion in direct aid. There's also the conditioning of U.S. disaster aid on Israeli business deals. In August of 25, FEMA aid for hurricane-hit states was reportedly tied to contracts for Israeli firms. What's that all about? And why can't you ask any questions about it? The federal jobs cuts even target Republicans more than Democrats. Target Republican areas have hurt Republicans far more than Democrats. Now, I'm always for shrinking the federal government, especially when you're running record deficits. But the point, I think, to bring this all together, because I don't want to make a huge, long video about it. Actually, I got it. Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton are still out there doing their thing. They're not in jail, folks. None of the deep staters, none of the people that were associated with Epstein are in jail. They're still free. Roger Stone, who was a Trump aide, wrote a couple fantastic books. He talked about the Clinton crime family. I think the book was called The Clinton Crime Family, and he did another one about the Bushes. And in those books, he makes some startling allegations that if they weren't true and they weren't provable, would lead immediately to a lawsuit for defamation or slander. No one ever sued him. You can still buy those books. Those things are true. And yet there they are, still free, still not charged, and all of their associates are still out there. They're not in jail. He hasn't brought the thunder to the deep state. And that should give everybody pause. You should be asking why. You shouldn't be circling the wagons, especially when Donald Trump is shooting at the wagons as we speak. He's literally blowing up the MAGA base that put him in power. And he's not going to make up that shortfall in votes from the Democrats. They're not coming over. Independents are fed up. People are sick of the gaslighting. Now, I'm telling you the truth of the matter because the midterms are coming up. And without that base of support, especially if, as I think is going to happen, the wheels start to come off the economy and they got to start printing again at a time when interest rates need to be going up, not coming down. When QE comes in this time, it's going to affect things very differently than it has in 2008 and 2011. In the past, this QE cycle might be the very last one before the US dollar finally falls and something else replaces it as a means of international settlement. This whole theme that I've been talking about in my video of central banks hoarding gold and silver is telling you of this future. Might not be tomorrow, but it's not too far off in the distance now. And when this economic storm breaks, which I think it will, valuations are far too high. They're already starting to do the retracement thing. You're seeing the credit markets tighten to the point where they're on the verge of breaking. This is all going to break in 2026. And the U.S. government's going to have to respond. And in the lead up to these very real things that I think are going to happen, Donald Trump has turned his guns on his own base. He's gaslit them about Epstein. He doesn't talk about Charlie Kirk anymore. We're being gaslit about Thomas Crooks. We're being gaslit about the guy that hit on the golf course and tried to shoot Donald Trump, who was a Ukrainian recruiter who was globetrotting around the world. Talk about weird. We don't have anything on that. What is the Trump administration hiding? At what point do people start asking openly, and I mean way more of MAGA than already is. There's a lot of MAGA that's already asking questions. But just average, ordinary people ask what has gone wrong with the Trump White House. And now I know this video is going to fall like a dead weight among my audience. Nobody likes it when I tell the truth about Donald Trump. A bunch of you are going to click dislike, but I'd ask before you do, not that it shakes me, but before you actually click dislike and you tune out, even though you're probably gone already, ask yourself if there's any truth to what I'm saying, if there's any validity to the concerns that I'm expressing here. Because if you care about MAGA, if you care about Fortress North America, if you care about the Constitution, if you care about the United States, if you care about deconstructing empire, if you actually care about ending the forever wars, well, then I think you need to care about the things that I'm discussing. I'm Frank Vaughn. I'll look forward to your comments.